So we are starting a new series called All I Want for Christmas. And no, the All I Want for Christmas is not you, with a capital Y, even though that's what Matteo was saying. Matteo was trying to convince me. Was it Matteo? Or it was you? Oh yeah, he was just speaking like Matteo. Someone was saying like, oh, you're going to say it's all about you and the capital Y. And sure, yes, we want Jesus for Christmas, but we want more than that. And they asked, if I were to ask you, what would it take to make you happy? What would you say? And no Sunday school answers. I want like the truth. What would make you happy? What would it take to make you happy? Amira says sleeping in, and she got a props. Okay, so sleeping in, so rest, sure. What would it take to make you happy? Come on, give me something, huh? Food will make you happy. Vacation, yes, absolutely. Switzerland would make you happy. I like it, Shetty. Absolutely. Actually, there's a survey, huh? There's a survey that was asked to about 52,000 Americans, and their answers were this. No, Switzerland wasn't on the list. It didn't make it. Their answers were this: friends or social life, job, being in love, recognition and success, sex, personal growth, good financial situation, having a house or an apartment, being attractive or beautiful, check. Just kidding. Okay. The city I live in, my religion, recreation, exercise, being a parent, marriage, your partner's happiness is the last thing. The last thing. The interesting thing is about all of these things is that these were all external situations. When we even started thinking about it, it was all about our external. You know, it was all about our external. And it's about like the when and then type of thinking. You know, the popular idea of happiness in the world right now is that we need to have the right circumstance. The when and then. When, you know, I graduate, I'll be happy. Then I'll be happy. When I get a job, then I'll be happy. When I get married, then I'll be happy. When I have children, then I'll be happy. When the children move out, then I'll be happy. This is like the when and then type of thinking that we have, and this is what the world is kind of trying to teach us, is that if you have the right circumstance, then you could be happy. Then you could be happy. In Ecclesiastes chapter 2, Solomon, he is the wisest man that walked this earth, he says, I've tried everything. I wanted to be happy, so I've tried everything. And he came to three conclusions, he arrived to three dead ends, which were accumulating things. He had everything. He said, I wanted to be happy, so he went out and he got himself whatever, cows and donkeys and whatever you bought at the time. This is what he did. He accumulated things. He had all the riches of the kingdom. He was the king. He could get whatever he wants. And that didn't make him happy. He experienced pleasure. He went out and he said, okay, well, I'm not going to prevent myself from anything of this world. If I want to have sex, I'm going to have sex. If I want to, you know, play ping pong, I'm going to play ping pong. Whatever it was, this is, I know I went really extreme here. Like I know, but whatever. You get the point. It's about dramatic effect. So he did this and he said, dead end. Dead end. It didn't matter. Or achieving success. You know, he was on the top of the world. He was building these great things and all of this. Yet, he still said that I'm not going to have, I don't have happiness. He said that basically, it was like he was chasing after the wind, which was useless. So, to save yourself time, go home and read chapter 2 of Ecclesiastes. It's hard to pronounce. but it's a book right after Proverbs or before Proverbs. It's in that area. All right? Accumulating things will not make you happy. If you could just win the lottery, how many of us, honestly, don't raise your hands, but how many of us said this? Like, if I just win the lottery, I'll be fine. I'll pay the debt off for the church. I'll do this. Like, obviously, I'm going to do great things, but I'll be happy. Somebody once asked, somebody said, how much does it take for a man to be happy? And the answer was, just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. And that is the truth. We have people that have all the money in the world, and they're still not happy, and they commit suicide. We have people that are the most popular people in the world. Still, they're not happy. They're not happy. We need to experience pleasure. We search for thrills, and this is what the world around us is trying to teach us. And basically, we are very conscious about our stature, our position. We want people to recognize us. We want people to say and to call us by, the 3 last letters after my name or whatever it is. We want people to recognize us. And this is something that Solomon was saying, that this is not going to bring happiness. All of it is meaningless and chasing after the wind. That's a different translation. But this is what Solomon came to. So in a nutshell, happiness is not going to come from some external source. In this series, what we want to dive into is this concept of joy, the concept of happiness. And I'm not going to differentiate so much between joy and happiness and this. The bottom line is, how do I become blessed? How do I become blessed in this world? What are the steps that I need to take in order to live a life that is blessed? And I bet you, and I'm hoping by the end of this series that the question, all I want for Christmas, is the answer is going to be, I want to be blessed. This is what I want. Nothing else other than to be blessed. So it's not about the circumstance, it's about an attitude. A positive attitude gives you power over your circumstance instead of your circumstance having power over you. The popular thought of happiness today is about the right circumstance. We're going to try and debunk that a little bit, that it's not about the right circumstance, it's about the right attitude. And we're going to try and get into that. And where we're going to base this off of is going to be off of Matthew chapter 5. And we've read this gospel many times throughout the liturgy. And it's the gospel of chapter 5. It's the beginning of his Sermon on the Mount. This is one of the most popular sermons that Christ has given. It goes for about I think 3 chapters or 2 chapters, 2 full chapters in the Gospel of Matthew. We're only going to take a few of these verses, but he starts off with 8 statements. And these 8 statements, we entitled them, or the Bible entitles them, the Beatitudes. The attitudes to be. This is what we need to have in order for us to be happy. And it starts off by saying, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs the kingdom of heaven. Over the next 4 weeks, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how can I be blessed. And we're going to equate that to our happiness. We're going to equate that to an internal joy that you could carry throughout your life. Obviously, when you listen to these Beatitudes, they don't sound very promising. What do you mean happy is? So if we replace the word blessed, you could replace it with the word happy, it's a loose translation. You know how sometimes the word in Greek will need a few different English words to actually get the original meaning. And one of it is, so blessed, a lot of times you think of, okay, well, I have a lot of things, but it also means to be happy. They use the word happy in there. But a lot of times when we look at this, it doesn't make sense. there's a lot of contradictions, which says, happy if you're sad. That doesn't make sense. Blessed are you if you're sad. Blessed, I'm going to read a different translation. Happy if you're sad. Happy if you're poor. Happy if you're down and persecuted. That just doesn't make sense. Those two don't line up. And we want to see, why did Christ decide to start off his Sermon on the Mount with this? Jesus wants to teach us that happiness does not depend on our outside circumstance, but our internal attitudes. The first one, and the one that we want to discuss today, is this one, which is, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs the kingdom of heaven. What is this, blessed are the poor in spirit? What does that mean? Blessed are the poor in spirit. How is this something positive? For theirs the kingdom of heaven. Who wants to take a shot? What's he whispering? Be his microphone. Humble spirit, absolutely. And this is what we want to talk about today, which is about humility. The opposite of poor in spirit is arrogance. The opposite is being egotistic. Jesus said, if you're full of arrogance, or you have a big ego, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to be happy. So what does it mean to be poor in spirit? How can humility increase my happiness? Because a lot of times we look at humility and we think that it's time to be stepped on. It's time for us to be weak. It's time for us to be, like, oh, if somebody says something that I don't really like, then a humble heart will stay silent and not say anything about that. That's not what humility is whatsoever. Humility has a lot of advantages when we start to think of it in the right way. And the right way about humility is not about being stepped on. It's just about how much are you willing to surrender your life to Christ? Are you willing to live a life that is of surrender, or are you willing to live a life that says, no, I have it all together? We hate this because we want to make sure that people understand we got it all together. We have to show this. It's important for us to show it that we have it all together, and you need to respect me, and so forth. I don't know if I give you guys the example one time of the guy when they were going for communion. It was in one of our churches. This is a true story, unfortunately. And they were basically saying the guy wanted to be humble, so he's kind of telling him, go ahead, George, you go first. And he's like, no, you go first. No, you go first. George, you go first. George, go first. He's like, Dr. George. Like, really? Like, are you serious right now? Like, this is the time that you want to be recognized as a doctor? Like, it's silly. It's silly because we don't understand, we don't have the right understanding of humility. I want to go through just a couple of quick points just about how can humility increase our happiness. Our happiness. Humility, number one, what it does is that it reduces stress. Humility is a time for us to retire as the GMs of our life. We are no longer like the general managers of our life. Once you start to have a humble heart, you are able to say that I don't know everything, that I don't have all the answers, and I don't have to have all the answers. That you're able to say, I don't know. You're able to say that, well, this person could do it better than I can. Not in a way that I'm trying to release responsibility, but it's out of humility. So it's time for us to retire in terms of control. A lot of times we like to control situations and control everything that is happening around us. That if it's not done at this particular time, by this particular person, in this particular fashion, then it's not good. Why? Why? Because it has to be my way. It's my way or the highway. It's my way or the highway. We want people to know that we are in control of things. Why? Because it makes us look good. It makes us look good. Humility will reduce our stress in our life. It's time for us to retire. Retire from thinking that you need to control every little aspect of your life, that you have to have it all together. I'm not a perfect father. And once I come to realization of that, my stress level with my kids, I understand that I'm going to make mistakes with my kids. Those mistakes are not going to be as harmful to me. Like when I say something to my kid and realize that later on that was a mistake to say that, if I'm able to come back and say, well, wait a sec, okay, you're not perfect. You made a mistake. It's not the end of the world. But if I hold myself to a level that I am perfect and I shouldn't never make a mistake, then that's a stressful type of living that I'm going to live. So humility reduces stress. It also releases the tension between the real and the ideal. The real and the ideal. The reality is that I want, I don't know, I want a great job. This is what I want. Ideally, that's what I want. I want the perfect job. The minute that I come out of university or college, I get a job that pays me $200,000. I get 5 weeks vacations right off the bat. That's the ideal. The reality is I can't get a job. That's the reality. That's not in my control. I'm not saying don't do anything about it. I'm just saying realize that not everything is in our control, that the real and the ideal are not always going to meet. And having a humble heart, having a heart that surrenders to God, using humility in the right way, will allow you to reduce your stress in your life quite a bit. Saint Silouan says, some suffer much from poverty and sickness, but are not humbled. So they suffer without profit. But the one who is humbled will be happy in all circumstances, because the Lord in his riches and joy, and all the people will wonder at the beauty of his soul. Take that in for a second. Take that in and see what's happening here. The only difference between the two statements is the humble heart. That's the only difference. And what's the difference? One doesn't profit, and one, everyone sees the beauty of his soul. Who do you want to be? Do you want to be somebody that's no profit, or do you want somebody to say, wow, look at that beautiful soul? Humility brings us to this level. Humility reduces our stress, and humility improves my relationship. Humility improves my relationship. How many of us like to be around people that are know-it-alls? Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. I'm like, you do? I'm like, no. Like, you destroyed the whole sermon. Like, no one. No one likes to be around a know-it-all. No one wants to be around somebody that has a big head. Nobody wants to be around somebody that is selfish and that everything is about him. Nobody wants that. You know, nobody wants somebody that, like, I'm saying a story and then you're going to say, I know that you're thinking of a better story right away. Well, I caught a fish this big. Well, I caught a shark. You know, like, it's my story. Like, stay out of it. Like, why do you want to always compare and be better? Nobody wants. Even you hear this sometimes, like, we joke around, you're like, my daddy is stronger than your daddy. Like, it's like, we always want to compare. We always want to be better than the other person. We think of this, and if we could humble ourselves in terms of like that, I don't need to be better than the other all the time, or that I don't need to at least show or put down the other persons, then that's we're on our way to better relationships. And when you're able to be humble, or when you're able to surrender, then there's a few words that kind of increase in your vocabulary very easily. One is a statement of 2 words, which is, I'm sorry. And one is, I was wrong. Or I need help. These words are not easy in our vocabulary if we have a prideful heart. But if we have a simple heart, and if we have a humble heart, and if we surrender ourselves to God, then guess what? When I wrong someone, or when somebody wrongs me, I'm able to say I'm sorry, regardless. Regardless if that person was right or wrong. For the peace of the situation, which is more important than who's right or who's wrong. It's not important who's right or who's wrong. And you'll notice this like later on, like in your relationships as well. Like we argue a lot in relationships, and what happens is the whole point of the argument is to make sure that that person knows that I was right. Nothing else. I want you to know that I was right and that you were wrong. This is important. It's important for us to try and improve our relationships by having a humble heart, which means that we're able to say, I'm sorry and I was wrong and I need help. St. Francis of Assisi says this statement: where there is love and wisdom, there is neither fear nor ignorance. Where there is patience and humility, there is neither anger or arrogance, or annoyance, or arrogance. We added the like St. Francis of Assisi, SMSV. Like St. Francis of Assisi, actually, he had, I read a story, and it said that every time somebody would give him praise for something, he would go back to his monastery, and then he would ask one of his fellow monks to tell him all his faults. Like, so somebody praised them, so he goes back to the monastery and say, hey, you need to tell me everything that's wrong with me right now. I'd be thinking, I was like, who in the world would do that? Like, why would you do that? Why would you, Francis of Assisi, get somebody to keep telling you what is wrong just to keep you humble, or getting someone to keep telling you what is wrong? And then it dawned on me, he wasn't married. He needed someone else. We live in the world. Sorry, I don't mean in a negative way, but we in the world have our parents, have our significant others. Those that are married are gonna have like their heavenly sandpaper at home. Like, this is what makes you smooth, is by like people tell people their faults. And, you know, it comes naturally in relationships. It's not a bad thing. It's, thank God Amir laughed at this one. Okay. I'm just saying, like, we all need heavenly sandpaper that will improve our relationships. We become oversensitive when it comes to relationships. We've become really sensitive, and that's because we're prideful. When somebody steps a little bit on my pride, all hell breaks loose. But if I had a humble heart, I'd be a little bit less sensitive towards somebody that said a comment that kind of like rubbed me the wrong way. I'd be a little bit more sensitive, less sensitive towards that. We need to learn to become less sensitive towards people that criticize us. To accept criticism with a heart that is willing to change our attitudes. Last but not least is it releases power. Humility will release power. God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 3, in a different translation of the Bible, it says, happy are those who know their need for God. God's power is released in our lives when we humble and we kind of give him the complete control. We give him the control of things. I've mentioned this before. One of the church fathers says the fastest way to heaven is through love and humility. And we understand how to love people and we know how to love God. But the humbling factor is a little bit harder for us. And that's why our church puts in place something like confession. We hate confession. Yes, hate confession. But the reality is when we do it, what are we doing? It's an act of humility. It's an act of coming to God and saying, I surrender in front of you. I don't know what to do. And I'm okay not to have like this mask in front of you and in front of your priest. I don't care. Right now, I'm coming and I'm being completely, like I'm surrendering myself to you. That, my friends, is where power is unleashed. That's why we always say that a sacrament in the church has an invisible grace. An invisible grace, a power that is giving invisible to something that is visible. When you look at communion, you see bread and wine change into body and blood. You don't see it, but you know that's happening. You are partaking of the body and blood of Christ. Invisible, but through a visible means. This is what happens when it comes to repentance and confession. So you, by your act of just even picking up the phone or texting and saying, hey, can we meet, to your spiritual father, is an act of humility. And you need to realize, what are you doing at this point? And what you are doing is you are releasing God's power in your life. It gives you power to do incredible things. I mentioned it earlier this morning in the sermon. Like, the miracles that we may see nowadays are a little bit different than what was in the New Testament at the time of the apostles. But they're still miracles. Like, a lot of times you look at relationships or at two people, or when somebody wronged you, there's no way, like in your mind at the time you say, there's no way that I could ever speak to this person again, yet forgive him. Yet, what has happened in people's lives, and I've witnessed it, is that not only that these people like forgive each other or speak to each other, these people have become like really good intimate friends, or good intimate like partners, you know, on a journey towards spirituality. These are the miracles that we're talking about. This is the power that you and I need nowadays. When we're faced with a society that keeps telling us that it's all about you. Do everything that is good for you. Make yourself happy. We're right now preaching and we're teaching something completely different, completely opposite. If you take this sermon and give it to one of your colleagues at work, they're going to say, you guys are idiots. Of course, that's not the way to happiness. The way to happiness is to make sure that you're okay, and that you take care of yourself, and that you make enough money, and that you have the big house, and that you have, you know, the nice family, and so forth. This is what this is what the world is teaching us, and this is what the message is for us today. It's completely opposite of that. So over the next few weeks, I want us to realize that the next few weeks are going to be useless if you guys don't want this. Okay? If you don't want to surrender your life, nobody could force you. If you don't want to surrender, then the next few weeks are going to be useless, and I feel like our attendance is going to drop. Hopefully not. I hope it's going to increase by you guys telling people, like, this is what we need. This is what the world needs. And this is not just us. Like, if you look at some of the a true leader finds his strength on his knees. On his knees. And you could look. I pulled out some of the like president's speeches or their inaugural speeches. And one of the first things that, I think it was President Obama that said this. He's like, I stand here today humbled. Humbled by the task before it, and grateful for the trust you have bestowed on us. Another president, it was George Washington, says, O eternal and everlasting God, I presume that to present myself this morning before your divine majesty, beseeching you to accept my humble and hearty thanks that has pleased your great goodness to keep and preserve me. The night has passed from all danger, poor morals, and so forth. The night has passed. The President of the United States is humbling himself by saying, I wouldn't have even woken up if it wasn't for you. How many of us do that? We're not the President of the United States. We're not the most powerful people in the world. But do we wake up in the morning and say, God, release your power today, because I'm surrendering myself to you. So hopefully, if you stick through the next few weeks, we're going to get through a couple other things that will make us happier people, happier and more joyful people. Next week, God willing, we're going to actually discuss on how to control your reaction. This is what we're going to discuss next week. Any questions or comments? No? You know, the 60 seconds. Okay, do we have any announcements? No, no announcements? Okay, just a reminder of Switzerland. Who's going now? Oh, 1, 2. Okay, we have more than this morning. So like this is good. Okay, guys, really think about it. Think about next week's service over the next few weeks. Think about like passing it forward towards someone. Do something really nice for someone this week. Like a simple thing that you could do as well is like you're in the Tim Hortons drive-through, just pay for the car behind you. But tell the person, God bless you. The person that you're paying, tell them, here, God bless you, Merry Christmas, and move on. Do something that will kind of like remind you who we are and what we're called to do. These are simple acts that we could do day in and day out that will remind us that we belong to an awesome, awesome, awesome God. God bless you.